Hello and welcome to today's webinar, ArcGIS 101. This webinar is brought to you by Applied Software. My name is Caitlin Dunn and I'm pleased to be your moderator today. We encourage you to take advantage of our fully customizable webinar console by clicking on the icons at the bottom of your screen. You can resize any of these widgets during the presentation. Click the Help widget if you need assistance. Then you have the Slides widget that contains the PowerPoint used for today's presentation. The Media Player allows you to control the volume. After that, you have the Q&A widget where you can type in questions and comments throughout the presentation. We'll take time to answer questions at the end of today's webinar. We are excited to connect with you further. Please take a moment to introduce yourself. For other questions or comments, or to request more information, click on the Next widget to send us an email. Next is the Facebook widget. Like our page to catch up on the latest trends, training opportunities, and much more. You can take the survey at any time during or after the webinar. We'll talk more about the survey shortly. The Resource widget contains links to check out our free webinar library and register for upcoming webinars. This webinar is being recorded for your convenience. You'll be receiving an email with the recording link for future reference. Find Applied Software on social media to make meaningful connections, receive special offers, and stay up to date on the newest innovations. Be sure to visit our website, asti.com, to see how to achieve your design and business objectives through our innovative solutions, training options, and services. Click the link in the resource widget to register for our next webinar about HydroFlow and view previously recorded webinars on demand. You can also find a complete schedule of upcoming events, webinars, and trainings on our website calendar, asti.com/calendar. I'm pleased to introduce Ken Driscoll. Ken is a senior specialist with Applied Software with a strong background in civil engineering and construction technology. Thank you for joining us today, Ken.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you can go ahead with your presentation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks again. So one of the things we want to kind of get started with in reference to our presentation. And our presentation today is in reference to ArcGIS. So I am just going to share my screen. And from sharing my screen, we'll take a look here and see. So from that, again, my name is Ken Driscoll, and I'm a senior application specialist for Applied Software. And she just talked a little bit about the background history. 12 years in residential and construction technology with survey, and then multiple transportation and hydrology. But for today's topic, the agenda for today is ArcGIS. In fact, ArcGIS 101, which means from the basics, fundamentals, all the way to what we want to do with ArcGIS today. So we're going to talk about ArcGIS, about Autodesk, the Autodesk connector for ArcGIS, and then how to add data and convert GIS data into civil 3D objects, and then also the idea of what it means to publish data to ArcGIS working with InfraWorks. And then I'll address any questions or concerns at the end. So the first thing that we want to take a look at is, what is ArcGIS? So ArcGIS is the Geographic Information Systems, which most people think of GIS in terms of working with maps and geographic information that's contained within specific environments. Most of the data and most people use Esri. So it's used for creating maps, compiling geodetic locations, geographic data, analyzing mapping, sharing and discovering the geographic information by using those actual maps, all in specific databases. So what we should do in reference to ArcGIS is look at it in a holistic view, because there's so many components when we start talking about this ideal of shapefiles and how we want to utilize those shapefiles, running analysis on those shapefiles. But, most GIS professionals and designers and engineers are trying to integrate from different perspectives based upon their infrastructure needs. So if we look at geospatial information or infrastructure, we can start looking at different insights, what specific technology, different organizations, how we want to be able to collaborate, where do we get this information from, and then analytics. So through the cumbersome role in terms of dealing with those, we have designers, we have engineers, and then we have GIS professionals who work separately in terms of using ArcGIS. So from GIS to mapping, sensors, and also geospatial systems. So typically what happens is the designer and engineer provides insight based upon the project. The GIS professional looks at that information from their perspective and provide some of the existing environment and as-built environment into a larger context. So what are we looking to do? Well, the first thing is change how the impact and how we connect with others in terms of shapefiles. Also, we want to be able to better understand and make improved decision making. So from infrastructure planning to design to construction and then also maintenance. So as we break down the barriers, because in the past, what we've done is we've worked in silos. And GIS and BIM is often fragmented and disconnected. But as you can see, bringing these together with ArcGIS allows current and GIS information accurately to designers and engineers and architects. So in terms of collaboration, it's a more effective and efficient approach. So where are we going with this? Well, to a more modern AEC. So improving workflows, changing the way we do things from the office and in the field, better collaboration between information products and clients, and then strategic partnerships, being able to solve complex with complete solutions. So different challenges, and then understanding projects and context, whether we bring geographic context into your design workflows or not, and then repeatable solutions, creating new revenue streams, basically empowering the entire AEC. So from that, we start combining location and design to better understand projects and context. So integrating workflows, infrastructure, natural resources, urban design. Collectively, we start looking at visualization, project analysis, how we're going to share that information and infrastructure. With natural resources, we look at environmental solutions, how we're going to share that information, being able to access all of that data. And then urban design, straight out of the box tools from Esri, including Autodesk, real world visualizations, 3D analytics, and also real-time dashboards. So as we move on, utilities, grid modernization, if we look at data, power utilities are expected to spend about $100 billion on networking communications over the next 10 years. 75% of total capital improvement, investment, transmission, and distribution projects between now and 2023, mostly on the grid modernization. 40% of capital investment for electric and gas. $4.7 billion to institute smart grid technologies. So just numbers and dates in terms of utilities for modernization. And then we talk about smart cities. United States forecast for $22 billion from 2018. Asia Pacific, $28 billion. And then key investments for projects for intelligent transportation, data-driven public safety, and then also energy and infrastructure. So looking at global trends around the world, Middle East, North Africa, forecast to invest $17 billion on smart infrastructure. Western Europe, $133 billion. Smart grids and microgrids, and then even South America, $20 billion in smart grid infrastructure. So electric utilities, spatial analysis, operational awareness, grid modernization, big data analytics, artificial intelligence, machine guidance, real-time visualization, and real-world modeling. And then if we look at electric utilities, asset management, how we support best practices and industry standards, real-world modeling, visualization, and also mobile interoperable machines. Connectivity, planning and routing, and then asset inspections with data collection. In the end, ArcGIS Utilities allows for field mobility also. Workflow management, collection and capture, and then also share and collaborate. Workflow management, collect and capture, and then share and collaborate. In the scope of things, a complete GIS in terms of asset management, safety, grid modernization, innovation, customers, in terms of how we utilize things. So that goes from the whole spectrum from concept all the way to project completion. So risk management, asset management, network control, machine guidance, drones, imagery, aerial, design and planning, field mobilization, and inspections. And as you can see, the gamut of different things in order to have this ideal of a complete GIS. As we look at things, one of the ways we utilize that data working with an Autodesk product is the Autodesk connector for ArcGIS. The Autodesk connector for ArcGIS was the first step in realizing, envisioning the concept partnership between Autodesk and Esri to integrate BIM and GIS workflows. So this is new functionality that started out in 2017, implemented in 2019, and then also with AutoCAD, MEP, Civil 3D, and also InfraWorks. And again, how does that apply to what we do today? Well, you have a GIS team on the Esri side. You have ArcGIS Pro and ArcMap, some of the older technologies in terms of Esri. And then you have a CAD user who uses the Autodesk product, who works with AutoCAD all the way from 2017 all the way to the current version of 2021. So how do we bring those things together? Many firms today run desktop GIS software. They say you're making data and maps either by saving locally to your hard drive or maybe uploading data to a server, an FTP site, a Dropbox. Some firms have taken bigger steps in terms of data interoperability to make workflows to transfer data between GIS and CAD smoothly. Ultimately, the current workflow is a manual process, requires a lot of adjusting coordinates, projections, and data schemes. Well, it's time to move on. So coming from this file-based idea, data is static, and GIS teams create this data from Esri that needs to be pushed to AutoCAD or Map 3D or Civil 3D. Well, one of the things you look at is this transition bridge from GIS to CAD. Typically, one would call that Map 3D, which allows you more transition from GIS to CAD. Now, on another hand, this method, again, is timely and error-prone. So what we bring to the table now is this new workflow that connects data using ArcGIS Online. GIS teams share, online organizations and Autodesk users can discover all of that data. Bringing those two together, GIS data into view, you can edit, save back, and then publish straight from CAD. All this happens by leveraging the value of ArcGIS Online. In addition, being able to share the data between CAD and Esri. So, by connecting these two to the cloud, you're not only exposing your team to GIS data, but connecting them to data sources from all over the world. Thousands of layer maps, Living World Atlas from Esri. All that data is curated by Esri and authored by authoritative sources such as USGS, NOACA, FEMA, Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Interior, all these agencies and much more. Now, in addition to that living atlas, users can also go out and connect to available sources and services in county and cities. Now, this is a fairly new concept again, but users can host featured layers. Users also can connect to ArcGIS Online straight from CAD. And by doing this, you also have the ability to collect field data from survey in terms of quick capture. Ultimately, you're able to deliver more with less. The industry needs to think differently about integrating BIM and GIS into workflows that move data seamlessly from one system to another. So whether that starts at concept, all the way to design, all the way to asset management, into monitoring and enforcement. Seamless collaboration, deeper understanding of data, and then better decision makers by stakeholders. Ultimately, GIS informs BIM, BIM informs GIS. Within this real world context, existing assets are accessible to engineers, designers, and construction. Ultimately, what if you could bring different types of information together? Geospatial data, creating information from a model. From that model, you can form a basis for planning, analysis and simulation, sustainability, and also visualization. GIS and AEC. From common data sources, you have access to aerial imagery, CSV, Excel spreadsheets, CAD data, vector, 3D models, real-time sensors, and also LiDAR. And then there's third-party applications and field data. So from that, integrating GIS and BIM will drive business with smarter decisions, accelerated projects, reduced costs, and smarter cities and resilient infrastructure. So new opportunities for AEC, collaborating with better access to information and keeping that data will create smarter decisions. And it's not just about Autodesk and Esri. This is about connecting to the knowledge of making anything anywhere. And for infrastructure projects and owners around the world, both public and private, enabling BIM and GIS mapping software to work together with CAD, the potential dramatically decreases workflow times. Now today, engineers and designers, from master planning, GIS data, preliminary design, detailed design, all the way to pre-construction, all the way to documentation, and then BIM data. You're given most assets need to be renovated or reconditioned or retired, decommissioned at some point. It's hard to imagine engineers and architects working entirely in GIS without the tools that they can use in BIM software. But in most cases, the investment in digital BIM and GIS takes you to the next level. As we look into the future, again, since 2017, Autodesk and Esri has made advances towards integrations. Again, we talked about the Autodesk connector for ArcGIS. It's running live now. You can publish Revit models into web scenes with ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Online. You have ArcGIS plugins for AutoCAD. Now, the partnership really provides value in terms of everyone. It makes it easier and faster for users. We'll take a look at that. It makes it easier and faster to bring in georeference data. We'll take a look at that. It reduces rework. And then it exposes users to new data sets, including thousands of files with Esri's Living Atlas Online, and then the open data sites for local governments and federal. One of the other benefits that most people don't look at is the integration of editing data. No longer do we have to go to the GIS department and say, can you create this data and then place it into a file and folder? Very fragmented in terms of working that way. So it's easier to make models from Revit files that we can view in a web browser. So from AutoCAD, InfraWorks, Revit, all the way to BIM 360. The future of ArcGIS. So as we look in, again, some of the unprecedented demand for assets, we talked about cities everywhere, buildings, almost 13,000 a day. $3.7 trillion in infrastructure spending. By 2050, you will need to, it's projected to build 14,000 buildings a day in urban areas. That's almost an increase of 30%, or 3,600 more buildings than we'll build today. And again, integrating BIM and GIS is on the rise because BIM information repurposed for design and data gives you great information in terms of operations and maintenance of infrastructure. And then data is needed for the context of buildings infrastructure within the entire system. Sometimes you want to see, I want to know, I want to plan, I want to know what the latest locations of roadway design, asset management, this is where we are today. And again, this is the current way of working. I will show you that now you can move time beyond that. I'm just moving a file to a system. So again, why change? These are inefficient ways of working with GIS and shapefiles with CAD. Together with Autodesk and Esri, they're allowing you to collaborate to provide native access to live BIM information within a GIS environment. Build more robust existing condition models by planning, by using Esri data, and then intuitive operational data for improved asset management. That's where we're headed. And again, there's a great demand for build efficiency and sustainability in terms of infrastructure. The challenge is for all of us to deliver a more and better infrastructure with less resources. And by doing that, we have connected delivery in terms of our ArcGIS and CAD process. So now we can extend digitalization of this construction site. The industry will be better positioned. Things like sensors, intelligent machines, and connected BIM allows us execution flawlessly, saving time and money, and reducing risks. So how does that really transition to CAD? Well, we're going to look at a great example of, this ideal. Like, for instance, what you're looking at right now, the Bay Bridge in San Francisco. Detailed planning on where traffic's going to be in each phase, how it all fits together, time and resources, what's linked, how they communicate, how they schedule, budgetary, even health issues before ground was broken. So the idea of virtual construction sequencing and time lapse, you really can appreciate where they're going with ArcGIS and CAD these days. Now, building on infrastructure and even cities twice, once in virtual environment, once in physical environment. It sounds inefficient, but the return on your investment on this connected process always comes back in dramatic savings, whether it's in cost or scheduling. Okay, so where do we stand from here? Well, if we look at Civil 3D in general, most of us look at this ideal of working with GIS in this manner. So in the past, what we've done is we've gone to our GIS department, or we've went to a website and grabbed data from USGS and other resources in terms of grabbing shapefile data. So something as simple as a shapefile, which comes with 4 files, a database file, projection file, an index file, and a shapefile. So in the past, what one would have done in terms of working with this ideal of a shapefile is they would type in map, import. So something as simple as map import or map insert with Civil 3D, it would bring up this dialog box. And from this dialog box, you can see you can bring in different types of file formats in terms of working with map. So again, we can, since Civil 3D is built on top of Map 3D, you have all the functionality of Map 3D, which again, Autodesk created Map 3D to kind of bridge the gap between Esri and Autodesk products. So here, as you can see, the old way of doing things was the Esri shapefile. So if I wanted to import an Esri shapefile, I would go in, go to my folder where the GIS specialist added that data in and told me where that folder was. And then I would just go to that folder under Map 3D, under Map Data, and then bring in that data. From that, I could bring in my parcels. And again, this was the old way of doing things. Then I would have to map and import and map data to layers, to my objects, a coordinate system, and then to the actual objects and points. You could actually do this 15 years ago. This takes time. This takes process in terms of bringing in that data. You could do that. Once I selected parcels, object class, and then the data, then I needed to map the data to specific objects called parcels. I could do that. I can import as polygons, and I select OK. It runs through this simple process of bringing in all of those parcels into Civil 3D or Map 3D for that matter. And we'll just wait a second here. And again, keep in mind this process in terms of time of processing these objects from Esri, an Esri shapefile, into CAD. A little bit time consuming. And then again, being able to transpose coordinate systems. So from that, it's bringing in those parcels. So it tells me at the command line, I brought in 32,000 that was inserted in 47 seconds. Well, 47 seconds, which may not seem like a long time, but add that to multiple projects. So if you look at it, you can see all the parcels that was brought in. And if you pick, it's just map bulk objects in terms of data that was brought in. And then if we go to, on the other hand, again, you could do this 15 years ago. So I'll come in, and then I'll select these objects. I'm just going to erase them. Pretty straightforward. This process, tedious and disfragmented. Well, now, today, they've advanced things a little more. So I can go here now. I can say, well, from Windows Explorer, I can just drag and drop right onto my window. Now, it's 47 seconds long. Yeah, 7 seconds is a lifetime compared to what I just did. And then if we go to the command line, and if you're with Civil 3D, you can just go to the palettes and go to your map task pane and turn that on. And from that, you have parcels. From those parcels, each parcel has data that's derived from Esri that's been brought over. So if I come in and select properties from that parcel, it's brought in all my attribute data from that parcel. Address, street name, APN number, acreage, land value, and also the area. Yeah, that's one of the flexible things that you can do by dragging and dropping. If I picked on parcels, I can also go in and stylize that data based upon those attributed objects. So if I came in now, I can create a new thing. This new thing, based upon the object data, I can pull in specific properties. Well, I can say, well, I want to display based upon land value from 0 all the way to $5 million, equally distributed. I'm going to select this style range. So for color purposes, you could choose any palette that you want. I'm going to select this one, which is fine. And then I'll just select OK. From that, I've just stylized all my parcels. So a little bit of flexibility in terms of what we've come to today. So this is in California. So one of the beauties of working with this data, as you quickly can see that it updates, once I drag and drop a parcel into a Civil 3D drawing, it automatically sets my coordinate system for my drawing. So that projection file that's located in Windows Explorer that's given to me by the GIS specialist, all that data is contained in those parcels when I bring it over. Now, on the other hand, what if I said, I want to get just a little bit faster in terms of working with this data? So today, on versions 20.2 with Civil 3D, now you have accessibility to the Autodesk connector for ArcGIS. What this Autodesk connector allows you to do is to sync right into my ArcGIS Online database. So not only do I have the ability to not drag and drop, but now I can sync this right to a specific area and location. Well, what do I mean by area and location? Well, once I select that, it takes me right to the Autodesk connector. Clearly, it takes you to the location of where you're at right now. But if I said something like Redding, California, I can zoom into that area. And then from that, I can specify the area of interest, which I'm going to select here. And then it zooms to that area with ArcGIS connector. And then it gives me accessible data from ArcGIS Online, straight out of the box. Well, what if I wanted FEMA maps? So I'll select FEMA. It goes in and it finds that data. So it gives me accessibility to all these different maps today. Not only that, if I take that away, I can have specific content from Esri that I can have my users have access to. If I went to my organization, and I'm going to close this, and I'll say, I'm going to close this again. If I come right back to my ArcGIS connector for ArcGIS, again, we're going to go Redding, California. It zooms right to it. I can tell it I want this specific area of interest that I want data from. I can tell it, well, based upon my organization, I can find and tell specific users only you can access this data. I can have specific users for specific groups. I can have individuals who are not in my company use this data. I can have specific only users in my company that have access to this data. Again, the ability to grab this data straight from a database where now I can say to the GIS specialist, that data's in your GIS database. I now have accessibility to it. And again, from public information all the way to private information, you have accessibility of this data. The beauty of working with the Autodesk connector for ArcGIS is the ideal now when you bring in utilities like pipes, sanitary, storm. Once you bring that into Civil 3D, now you have the ability to create Civil 3D objects from it. So let's say you have a whole city network of pipes and structures. Once you pull that into Civil 3D from ArcGIS, it creates Civil 3D pipe networks automatically. And you can map data. And not only map data, you can now push that data back to your GIS database. So the beauty of working with ArcGIS Online is you have accessibility to the data. You could give access to users inside and outside of your company or organization. And then you can map data back. And everything that you can see now, you can clearly do the same things with InfraWorks. So one of the things I wanted to be able to do in reference to working with this data is kind of show you in reference to what that looks like. So from that, if I went in, again, in 2019, Autodesk released this functionality. So again, this is new functionality in 2019.2, InfraWorks and Civil 3D, where you have the ability to connect right into GIS information published to ArcGIS. So this enables BIM workflows on the front end of project design, letting customers build from Civil 3D and InfraWorks directly into the GIS model. This includes access to ArcGIS content, points, lines, polygons, object attribute expansion, access to all GIS attribution, the refresh abilities, even from the field. So this is not an import, but a connection to the actual data source. So even pushing this data straight from a field or Civil 3D back to the connection and data source in ArcGIS. So a lot more flexibility in terms of value. So again, less error prone in terms of working with GIS data, more connectivity in terms of the Autodesk connector for ArcGIS. So a lot of flexibility in terms of what you want to be able to do, because anytime we start out with a concept plan, then we know we're going to need existing context of the existing environment, existing buildings, existing structures, existing utilities. All that data captured by GIS can be utilized straight into Civil 3D. So again, full functionality in terms of working with that data. It just allows me, again, to gain access to this idea of BIM in terms of a project and the life cycle of a project. So whether it's location, whether it's intelligence, whether it's BIM data, whether it's GIS data, all connected now. And again, that is what brings value to the table in reference to using ArcGIS Online. So in the end, there's probably a couple questions, maybe, but ultimately, we are Applied Software. We are here to empower clients, transform industries, and champion innovation. So that goes from a fully functional service staffed, from AEC to manufacturing. BIM services, we're one of the largest partners in the United States. We've been around since 1982. We have specializations from construction to building to plant to civil infrastructure. We're an authorized development center in terms of add-ons, product development, training needs, and also certifications. And as you can see, multiple certifications that we have in reference to applied software technologies. So any questions in reference to what I've shown or presented thus far?
I don't see any questions so far, but we'll let the audience take a minute to type up their questions.
Perfect. If there's questions. So Chad and Hector, are you guys working with GIS data? And Caitlin, you can let me know. I'll just kind of hold off here.
Okay, perfect. Of course, there might not be any questions. Everybody might have been like, all right, yeah, that answered all my questions. I have nothing else to say. It's totally possible.
Well, definitely, if there's no questions, the other thing that you have to keep in mind is from Civil 3D or InfraWorks 2019.2 is the ability to bring the Autodesk connector for ArcGIS in. And from that all the way to the current versions. So there may not be any questions.
Yeah, it looks like there's nothing in the Q&A, which is totally okay. They can definitely email in their questions at any time. There's some information about that on the main page. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and end it. So yeah, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you spending your time with us, and we trust it was meaningful and impactful for you and your business. We look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Thank you again, Ken. That was awesome. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.